One of my pet peeves, maybe it's just me, is I think that too much nowadays is labeled as gothic, which stupid. Well, at this point, just burn the whole book. God damn it. It ended on a cliffhanger. The second book is not out yet. Hey Reese, it's Julia, the ex-English major. Today I'm going to be doing another reading vlog for a book that I have seen briefly online, and all that I know about it is that it is gothic romantasy. So the book that I'm going to be reading here is Weavingshaw. One of my pet peeves, maybe it's just me, is I think that too much nowadays is labeled as gothic, and maybe that's just me being a little bit of a purist. When I think gothic, I think like capital R romance, like big sweeping landscapes, weather that reflects mood, doubling haunted houses, generational curses, kind of implied metaphors for really big themes of like religion, the Southern Gothic, where it's kind of like how religion is used to perpetuate racism, or some of those kind of meaty topics, you know, the divine versus science. That's what I think of when I think of kind of Gothic tales. And so much online says, oh, if it's kind of spooky, well, it's gothic. And so I have no idea if this is going to be one of those just kind of dark atmosphere equals gothic, or if it's actually going to be a gothic story. So I figured that this would be a really good one for a reading vlog. It's going to contain spoilers. We are going to get into the kind of section by section. I don't know if you've seen, because I dog ear my pages, I have broken up this into kind of specific check-ins. So I'm going to check in at about the 25% mark, about the 50, about the 75, and then the end. So I just picked the kind of natural chapter break that was as close to those deviations as possible. So that way I have regular check-ins and I will kind of summarize where we're at. But the goal of this one is just to have fun, see what all the hype is about. Since I've just heard, hey, it's good, it's a gothic romantasy. I don't really know any sort of trigger warnings. There is not a list in the front. More books need to have that, but I'll make a quick call here real quick. Hello, this is Julia. Hey, yeah, Julia from the future. You are on speakerphone here. Can you just give a quick rundown, now that you've actually read it, about what all of the trigger warnings are? That would be super helpful.
Yeah, okay. The biggest one that I can think of is there is reference to suicide by drowning, both in kind of past tense, but also we get some flashbacks of pretty much the event itself. Our main character can talk to ghosts. There is also reference to abuse, and specifically abuse of a child. There is some threat of sexual harm, both kind of pre-story and then also within the story. And then there is just kind of general for gore. Again, the main character can see ghosts. There is reference to amputation of limbs, and then just kind of general blood and gore. Overall though, pretty tame, both in kind of how things are described. It's not very gratuitous. Same with the romance, is extremely PG. All in all, I would say that as long as any of the trigger warnings wouldn't be so off-putting to you, then you should be good to go. Overall, it's pretty tame, but just kind of viewer discretion, especially if any of those would kind of be triggering for you. If that's the case, then maybe I will catch you in the next video.
Great, thanks so much.
See you later.
Now that she has informed us, since she's read it, what trigger warnings there are to look out for, I will go ahead and read the summary on the dust jacket here, and then we will hop on in. 3 years ago, Lena Al-Sayer awoke with a terrible power. She can see the dead. Since then, she has hidden herself from the world, knowing that if she ever reveals her curse, she will be locked away in an asylum. When her beloved brother, Rami, falls fatally ill, Lena is faced with a terrible choice. Let him die or buy the expensive medicine that will save his life by bartering the only valuable thing she has, her secret. The Saint of Silence, a ruthless merchant who trades in confessions and shrouded in unearthly rumors of cruelty and power, accepts her bargain for a deadly price. Lena must find the ghost of Percival Avon, the last lord of Weavingshaw, or lose her freedom to the saint forever. As Lena's search takes her and the saint to Weavingshaw, she finds the estate and the surrounding moors to be living things, hungry for blood and sacrifice. Fighting against Weavingshaw's might, Lena must also face her growing pull towards the enigmatic saint himself, whose connections to Percival Avon remains a mystery. As the house begins to entomb them, time is running out for their desperate hunt for answers. For Lena has come to see here in Weavingshaw, the dead are not hushed, and some secrets are better left buried with them. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and pop on into this, and I will check back in with you at the 25% mark. Okay, checking in now that I am at the 25% mark. We are introduced to our main character, Lena. She is asking her neighbor, Marjorie, about where she can go and find the Saint of Silence because her brother has what's called sweeper's cough, which is this super contagious cough that it's kind of like how like chickenpox is, where if you've had it as a child, you are immune to it, but it's one of those things that kills most people who have it. Her brother has this illness and she has spent a bunch of money trying to buy various medicines for it, and all of them have not worked and he's getting worse and worse, and so she turns to her neighbor Marjorie to figure out where this Saint of Silence is. Her neighbor Marjorie is the only person in the little tenant building, the apartment building that she's currently living in, who is not an immigrant. Her parents moved here because there is a civil war happening in her home country. People who are kind of rebelling against this king, this monarch. It's called the Malik. Her family is part of the rebellion. One of the reasons that her dad left is because he was a scholar. He was a teacher at a university who had anti-monarchical views. And so he and his wife, and the wife was pregnant at the time with our main character, fled. In a refugee camp is where our main character Lena was born. A few years later, her brother was there, and at the start of the story, we just know that it's just her and her brother now in this immigrant apartment. And so she has been warned by Marjorie to avoid the saint. And we see pretty early on that Lena's a little bit strange. She keeps looking over her shoulder at things that aren't there. She used to have a really, really good job as a ladies' companion with a member of the aristos, which is kind of the aristocratic peerage group. But her odd behavior that started when she was about 17, 3 years before the start of the story, is something that everyone knows. People know that she's strange. Marjorie even warns her and says, hey, it's going to be even worse for you if you go to the saint. When are you going to stop making a fool of yourself? When are you going to take your reputation seriously? How much further are you going to let yourself fall? And Lena's educated. She's educated both in her native language as well as with the language of this country that she's currently living in. She very much is aware of appearances. She puts herself together as best she can with the amount of money she has, but even still she knows it's an uphill battle. No matter what though, she has said that, hey, my brother is worth much more. Marjorie reluctantly gives Lena directions and Lena goes. On the way, she is stopped by a group of guys who are called Blackcoats, and we learn that not only is her brother sick with this illness,
guess what? I got a fever.
But he is part of this gang, and what he does for them is he is one of their fighters. He's a sword fighter. He notably only has one arm, which was due to a riding accident when he was a child. So he makes himself very distinguished, and he kind of works harder because of his missing limb, and so he very much stands out. Everyone knows that he is part of this gang. The Blackcoats who stopped Lena on her way reminded her that her brother has missed the last fight and that it's not going to look good for him if he continues to not be present for fights because he's ill, and that likely it is implied that she will be assaulted or taken as payment if her brother is not there. So she continues on her way, ends up going to the house that the Saint of Silence is supposed to be at. There is no one who answers the door. She talks to someone, no one is around, and then is guided to kind of the back where she enters, and she is stopped by a housekeeper who, there's something odd about the housekeeper. The housekeeper, very severe woman. It's the descriptions in this were really interesting. It says that she has skin that's so tight that it feels like her skull will just split through it. The woman is very strange. She and the woman get in a bit of a tussle, but Lena says that the Saint of Silence will want to hear her secret, and so she is taken in. We are introduced to our Saint of Silence. That is his nickname. His real name is Bram Saint Silas. He's very, very meticulous, puts everything in its place, very severe, seems aloof, seems separate from anything going on around him, but he is extremely cunning. He's got eyes that, like, it feels like he can cut into you. And his job is he will spend money for secrets. And so if you have a secret for him, he will pay you what it's worth. However, if you lie to him, there are really severe consequences. She tells him that she has a secret, and that they get into a bit of a contract wherein it says that if her secret is good enough, then she will get 1 dose of this fancy medicine that will save her brother. So they draw up a contract, and she reveals to him that she can see ghosts.
I want to tell you my secret now. I see dead people.
And he says, well, prove it. Are there any ghosts in my house? And she says no. And so he says, well, you can't prove it then. Are you willing to do what it takes to prove it to me? She agrees. And so he takes her on essentially like an excursion. It's middle of the night to this prison. And it is said that the prison keeps housing more and more prisoners, political refugees, dissenters, anyone that the current king in this moorland country views as a criminal goes into this prison. And the prison is the biggest building in this country, and it is ever expanding. We learn that her father has a life sentence in this prison because he's been somebody who was seen as building a union. There are extreme work conditions, especially for refugees. And so when her father was seen as inciting a union with some of his speeches, even though he does not speak the native language in this country very well, a lot of the other workers are also migrants, and he is somebody who is very good at speaking. He has a lot of deep thoughts, and he will kind of express those thoughts one way or another. And he's very, very good at getting people on his side and getting people to see the flaws in some of the other arguments. And so because of his eloquence and his leanings, again, he had to leave the country of his native land because of his anti-monarchical sentiments. Seems like he was doing something very similar about the unfair treatment in this current country, and so that is what landed him with a life sentence in the prison. So we learn that as she's walking down the hallway, she keeps looking to see if she can find her father in there. She does not find her father, but along the way there is one prisoner that the warden kind of takes her past that is a man from her home country, and she asks the warden who this person is, and he says that it is a high-ranking prisoner who was taken and they were put there by her home country because he was somebody who was like a high-ranking official in the rebellion. And so she whispers something that is for her in her native language for her country, is kind of a phrase for the rebellion. Saint Silas notices that, and he kind of smirks at her. He recognizes that she also likely has anti-monarchical sentiments, even though she wasn't born in her home country. He's kind of learning things about her. We keep going, and eventually the warden drops them off at this cell, and there is someone who is extremely emaciated. And she learns that this person used to work for Saint Silas, and that he is in prison for murder. The warden is sent away, and Silas asks our main character, Lena, if she sees any ghosts, and she does. She sees someone who has a wound in his temple. Silas says, well, ask the ghost who killed him. Lena says that ghosts can no longer communicate. And he says, well, then have him point to his murderer. And so she has the ghost do that, and the ghost points at Silas instead of at the man in prison. So we learn that Silas is extremely shady. She, on the way home, now that she has proven that she can see ghosts to St. Silas, he has a bit of a discussion about, aren't you curious as to what happened here? She says, no, so long as I get the medicine, I'm not someone who cares why you did what you did. He gives her the medicine. They're back at his workplace and his home. It's like his workshop is a study within his home. And he says, well, it's a pity that you only asked for 1 dose instead of 2 because you are also suffering with it and you are going to die. He reads off the symptoms of the disease, and she is indeed in the early stages of this sweeper's cough.
Guess what? I got a fever.
She said that she thought that she had already had it as a young child, but apparently she didn't because she is here with the symptoms, and so she is going to die soon. And so St. Silas says, well, since you have this ability, what would you say if we wrote up a second contract and this one would be for your life? I will give you the medicine, but you will be now in my employ. You will be living here and you will be working for me in whatever capacity I deem until you find a ghost for me. This ghost is the ghost of Lord Avon, who used to be of Weavingshaw. And so she reluctantly agrees. They have a big back and forth around the contract, and this is where we kind of see the cunning underhandedness of our main male lead, Bram St. Silas. And eventually it's determined that they sign the contract. She goes home. She has a week to help her brother out. So she takes the medicine. She gives the medicine to her brother, and she is in the midst of her fever. The medicine takes a while to work for both her and her brother. While she is both caring for her brother and trying to get this fever settled, she is being contacted more and more by the ghosts, and so we start to learn more about her past. Not only can she see ghosts, but ghosts can possess her. There have been times that she has woken up and very clearly been possessed by ghosts. It started, like we said, when she was 17, working in that lord's house, the aristocrat's house, as a kind of a lady's companion for the aristocrat's mother. And she ended up having to leave because she was terrified that she was going to get placed in an asylum. More and more it was seen that she was interacting with these ghosts. She could not hide it, and she was terrified because the ghosts kept trying to possess her. She, upon coming home, she was so terrified that she had ended up leaving her position. Her parents had really pressed into her about the need to get a good education, learn how to pass in this new country, how being able to adapt to the new country would open doors for her that other things about her immigrant status would not. And so she is very well educated. She's fluent in both languages, and her dream is actually to work as a translator, translating poetry from her native language to this language of Moreland. It's also said that her mother was a poet, and so one of the reasons that she wants to be a translator is to be able to translate her mom's poems, and we learn that her mother has died in the past. And so when she came back home kind of from this position that she quit, she was so worried that her father would kick her out, but her dad said, nope, we'll figure things out. And unfortunately that was the day that he was arrested. And so she then had to learn how to handle these ghosts. They tried everything, her and her brother, and eventually certain things started to work. And so tapping coins together and humming are both things that deter the ghosts a little bit. And they also cannot cross a salt circle. And so she eventually ends up getting some sleep when she is in a salt circle. However, it's determined that one evening she fell asleep, woke up with a ghost trying to possess her. A rat had scurried across the circle and broke the salt, and so these ghosts are always trying to possess her. She's kind of constantly vigilant and trying to do what she can to avoid these ghosts. They come to her when she's weaker, so they tend to be around her more when she has the fever like she's currently fighting, if she's ill, if she is tired. The ghosts are also stronger at midnight and at noon. Because she has this illness, the ghosts are coming to her more and more, and she keeps having these dreams wherein she she is the person who died. She has these dream sequences where one of them, she is a boy who was bitten by a rabid dog. There's another one where there was a woman who was dying of cancer, and her final breaths was just trying to get to her husband. It was implied that her elderly husband had died or gotten injured somewhere out of the bedroom, and the woman was dying as trying to do what she could to get out the door to go and help her husband, and she did not eventually make it to the door, and so she is tethered to this earth because she could not get to her husband in time. But one of the dreams that she has is of her mother. She has never seen her mother's ghost, and she has never had dreams of her mother. The only thing that she feels tethered to her mother is there is a book on botany that her mom gave her, and she keeps that book tucked under her pillow. And in this dream of her mother, she is a young child in the refugee camp. She is trying to learn the native language of this country through the botanical book, and she is reading about this flower that is seen to kind of conquer wolves. And she keeps looking out the window and looking on at her younger brother who is playing, and her younger brother gets to play, and why does she have to study? And her mother in this dream interrupts her studying. The mother says that her father is going to be taken by this thing called the Wake, and only she can free her father from the prison, and that she should not trust the Lord Avon because the Lord Avon is devil touched. She wakes up after this dream, and she isn't quite sure if the dream was a memory or a premonition. She does not remember having any conversation like that with her mother, but also she keeps having these dreams of kind of the final moments of each of these people. So very interesting. And it is said that shortly after the moment in the memory is when her mother died of an illness that ravaged throughout that camp. Eventually she goes and she is stocking up for her brother for when she's going to leave him. Her brother is still fighting it, but he is on the mend, and she's stocking up on food, and she's also trying to buy a knife because she wants to have some way to protect herself. She does not feel safe with her new employer. It's mentioned that she has had awful employers in the past who have beaten her, who have attempted to sexually assault her, and no matter how awful some of the violence has been against her with some of her other employers in the factories, in the little ways that she's been able to get by, she knows that something about this new employer, even though he seems very put together, even though he seems like someone who is respectable, she knows that he is probably the most dangerous employer that she could have had, and so she wants to find a way to protect herself, but unfortunately she does not have enough money for a knife, even when she tries to haggle the price. She finally has to go. She feels pretty confident that her brother's on the mend. Every day that she has been getting better, there has been water left on her doorstep. It's not really sure who of her neighbors has seen her struggling with the illness. After seeing her struggle, try to pump the water one day. Nobody stepped in to help her that one day, but ever after, there was enough water pre-pumped for her outside of her door. So she knows that her brother will be taken care of. She lies to her brother that she has a position as a nanny and that she will see him again soon. Goes to her new employer. She finds that he is going to ask her while she is searching for this ghost that she is to sit in on his confessions, and she is supposed to write down and indicate to him if there is a ghost nearby to kind of see if any of his clients are haunted. She sits in on these. They are all affecting her terribly. She starts in the beginning. She has these outbursts, learns very, very quickly that the saint will have none of it. He punishes her for her outbursts in the beginning and for having feeling affected by the confessions around her, that he is to take her book on botany, and for every one of her outbursts and distractions, he will take a page and burn it.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And his routine is the people will come in, will sit down, they'll tell him their requisite secret. Occasionally, he will write their secret down in a ledger, and he always wears his gloves, so even when he's touching the ledger, he's in his gloves. He's like very exact and precise around what he does with this book. And after he writes their confession in his book, every time a confession is written down, the person seems like they have been beaten. It said that they age in front of her, that it feels like, it almost looks like they have been battered. And he does not write every single confession, but the ones that he does has a very, very significant toll on the confessor, but they are paid. Whether or not the confession is big or small, he pays them for their secrets. And he will punish them for their lies. He is very good at rooting out lies, at asking the correct questions, and at catching people in lies. This is true in his confessions. It's also true when he is talking with Lena. And so little by little, Lena gets kind of beaten down more and more. She has little things that she tries to do to rebel. For example, she likes to wear lavender in her hair. And the reason that she does that is because it brings her, or she's trying to have it something that will bring her comfort when she is sitting there listening to all these things. She's not supposed to be reacting. She is gotten better at controlling her outbursts verbally, but she cannot hide any emotion on her face. She's a lot like me in that regard, where I feel like if I'm thinking something, it shows up. Thank goodness in my job, we are 99% of the time a camera off company, because if I think something, it shows up. And so she's the same way, and she has not been able to school herself in that regard yet. He very much is displeased at this. He has told her that for each one of her outbursts, which includes her facial expressions, he's burning her book, and she basically gives him a big fuck you. And so he says, well, how much do you think that this latest big fuck you outburst cost you? And she says, well, at this point, just burn the whole book. And he said, thank goodness, because I've been tired of feeding them page by page into the fire.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? No, a summer's day is not a bitch.
Throughout his confessions, we learn as well that he has all of the important people under his thumb. It doesn't matter if they are members of the gang, if they are members of the police, if they are the highest echelons of this aristocratic kind of level. All of the people kind of answer to him. It doesn't matter the size of the secret, he'll find a way to use it to his advantage. We learn this pretty early on as well, when there is a member of the Black Coats who comes and tries to lie to him. He gets caught in that lie and he is tortured. There are evenings where it is midnight and she was trying to call the spirit of Lord Avon to her. She was unsuccessful in all of her attempts so far to find out information about Lord Avon. She is not able to find the ghost yet, but because of that, she kind of crept down the stairs. She hears someone being tortured. She is caught by St. Silas and he inquires as to why she's leaving late at night. She tries to lie to him and say that she has a significant other who she has not been able to visit because of her new employment, and she's sneaking out to see her beau, and he very clearly catches her in that lie. He says, you're going to go visit your brother because you feel bad that you did not tell him you work for me. Do not ever lie to me again. I will let you see your brother in 2 weeks' time. As more and more of the confessions take place, we learn that there is a bit of a conspiracy with the Black Coats, and the Black Coat who was caught in the lie one day comes into the office that the confessionals are in, and he comes in directly after there had been a squabble that one of the police officers comes to talk to Silas and say that he is needed in the front because one of the disgruntled confessors was causing a scene, and the police officer was going to handle it, but I guess he handled it too much, and he's not sure if the disgruntled confessor is even alive, and the women who are nearby are wailing and crying, and so he needs to come and help clean this up. St. Silas leaves the office. Lena goes to look at the ledger, and she touches the book, and instantly it's every bad feeling that she's ever had in her life. Every guilty feeling, every repressed emotion is suddenly there. She is gasping, she's crying, and the feeling kind of fades slowly, and eventually when she comes to, Silas is in the doorway. He's very upset with her that she has touched the ledger. He's upset that she has had no progress in the search for Avon, and while he's kind of berating her, the Black Coat who lied to him in the past comes in and he points a gun at her because he's just disgruntled at St. Silas, and immediately, so Lena is transfixed because there's a gun pointed at her. She is in fight, flight, or freeze. She picked freeze. Throughout the encounter, as the black coat has been more and more agitated and was yelling at St. Silas. There was no reaction, but as soon as the gun was pointed at Lena, St. Silas immediately slits the black coat's throat. Blood gets all over her. He mostly just is kind of mockingly inquiring if she's okay. Lena's clearly in shock. He asks her if she's able to get out of her seat, and she can't, so he holds out a hand, but she just ignores it, and eventually she comes to on her own. It's getting closer to the day that Lena is going to see her brother, and then the night before, it is this festival of demons, wherein it's kind of this big debaucherous festival where people go in masks, they dress up in costume, and it's this big kind of raucous festival celebrating the day in the past where the saints, there are 3 saints, and that's one of the saints, the Saint of Silence, is what Saint Silas is kind of mockingly nicknamed after because of the similarity in his last name, Saint Silas, and the name of one of the 3 saints. But in the past, the realm used to be ruled by demons, so the religion goes. The 3 saints came to dispel the demons. Now, the day that the demons were dispelled is kind of a big feast day that slowly over time became less and less of a holy day and more of a kind of crazy festival, very a la Halloween, where kind of All Hallows Eve used to be kind of a it was originally at first like a Samhain that the church adopted, and then eventually became more and more less of a religious holiday and more of kind of a fun, let's all dress up and get candy, kind of how that has gone. It seems like there's a big parallel there with kind of how All Hallows Eve and All Saints Day has transitioned from being more of a Christian religious holiday and more of just kind of this like I don't want to say pagan, but back to its pagan roots, how Samhain was commandeered by the church, and now you see some kind of extremists in modern day Christianity saying that, you know, the Halloween's the devil's holiday and not letting their kids participate and blah blah blah. It's very similar to that. So that was a tangent. We'll see if I keep that in, but very similar to that. He tells her that he needs to borrow her services, and so he provides her a dress and a mask. The mask is like a skull. She puts on the skull, but instead of wearing the dress, she ends up wearing one of her home country's kaftas. It's one of the only days where it's acceptable for her to dress in her traditional attire. She's not going to wear the emerald green kind of Moorish dress that was provided. She wears a white kafta. She's kind of watching the festival from afar, but he keeps taking them, and he takes them to a temple. And at the base of one of the statues of the saints is a black coat. And the black coat is there saying how the leader of this gang is very, very unhappy with Saint Silas because he has murdered 2 black coats, and Saint Silas says, well, he shouldn't have been spying on me, and whether or not he's going to retaliate, if I find one of you spying on me again, I will kill hundreds of you. I won't just keep it at 2. And there is in fact a ghost. There is a man who has a knife in his back, and he also has a tattoo that says The Wake on his arm. And so she goes ahead and reveals that information. St. Silas says, hey, when I've finished conducting my business, if you are interested in finding out about the wake, because she's asked him questions in the past about this ever since the dream that her mother peered to her in. He says, if you want to ask questions, feel free when my business is conducted. He's escalating the interrogation of this black coat, and he says, well, Basil, I know for a fact that you are informing on me, and you also are informing for 3 different people. You are kind of acting as a spy, trading information about your boss. You are also trading information about myself, and you're trading information to the wake. Hearing these words again, Lena goes and asks, well, what is the wake? It is this kind of shady organization, and the leader of the wake used to be an aristocrat named Lord Avon, but he is no longer the leader now that he has died. And Basil does not provide information as to who the current leader of the wake is. St. Silas sends Lena away. She hears a gunshot. While she is kind of reeling about this information around the wake and the fact that Lord Avon used to be part of the wake, or used to lead the wake, she runs into someone who looks very familiar, and it's her brother. And her brother is furious that she is working for St. Silas, saying that he's going to get her out. Whatever she did they can run away. She says, no, I bartered for your life, essentially. So I am indentured into his servitude until my debt is paid. Don't cause a scene. You're going to make it worse. I will see you in a few days. I have leave to go visit you. St. Silas shows up and the brother pulls out his sword. Lena is terrified because she knows that Silas has a gun hidden under his jacket and he's just murdered somebody. So she attempts to kind of de-escalate the fight. Eventually, she ends up getting her brother away because she says, hey, if you do anything, he will punish me. So please go away. I will see you in a few days. I promise I will be there. And her brother says, if you don't show up, then I will come to his home and I will fight him. Silas is pissed off at her that she is kind of causing so much ruckus. She hasn't found the ghost yet. She is somebody who is interrupting his confessions. He's very displeased with her, and also her brother is causing a scene, and if her brother does anything to endanger her contract, then he will personally kill her brother. At this threat to her brother, she takes the gun that was in his pocket, grabs it and puts it at his abdomen, says, well, what if I were to kill you? She's at her breaking point, working with him is a nightmare, and he says that she doesn't have the spine to do it. Eventually, they kind of do like a secret for a secret, which has been something that they've done in the past, where if she wants information, she has to give information. And so she learns that the Lord Avon had taken something from Silas that it is something that he's in the past has stolen from him, and he's not going to take the theft in stride. Doesn't matter that Lord Avon has died. Something has been stolen from him by Lord Avon. He wants it back. He puts down the gun, and before he can pocket it, he moves the gun from his abdomen to his heart, and he warns her that if she wanted to do any real damage, then she should aim for the heart and not the stomach. The stomach would just be a flesh wound, but that the heart is not survivable.
Stop being so mean to me, or I swear to God I'm gonna fall in love with you.
She kind of spits back at him that she will, don't worry, I'll never be pointing a gun at anyone ever again. But she notices that for the rest of the evening, it seems like something has shifted between her and St. Silas, and she's not sure what it is. He's always been very kind of penetrative in his stare, but it feels like every time he's looking at her now, he's trying to kind of unravel or discover her, and she's very, very unsettled by his gaze. The next day, she wakes up and he tells her that the confessions are canceled for the day, and she is shocked. She's not expected this day off directly before a day that she's going to visit her brother, and he shows her a newspaper, and the rebels in her home country have overthrown the Malik, the king in her home country, and so the war is over. Her father's side of old has won. There is no monarchy there, and now there are currently rebellions in the streets, hence the closure of confessions for the day. And the reason for these riots is the disgruntled in this current country is now looking to the successful overthrow of the monarchy in her home country, and they're getting ideas. It's sparking revolution here too. The current king is sick. A lot of people are treated unwell, and hunger begets kind of riots and violence. And so people are looking to the revolution that was successful in a nearby country and are now putting the pieces together that maybe we should put a revolution in place here. Very much a la the revolutions that happened in kind of the 1700s, how we had kind of a domino effect of the United States leaving from Britain, France overthrowing their monarchy, a lot of various countries kind of overthrowing the shackles of colonizers and oppressors and kings after seeing some successful rebellions across the world. So it's very much kind of how kind of the 1770s and beyond, and a little bit before too. I'm not saying that America was the first. I just know America the most because I am an American who grew up partly in America. And so you teach American history when you live here. And so those are the ones that I know more of. But, there have been others around that same time. There are a lot of revolutions sparking, and we're seeing something similar here. in this book with kind of that. Instead of having confessions today, he is going to take her to one of the houses that Lord Avon used to live at in order to kind of see if his ghost is hanging around there. And so far, they have been unsuccessful. So far, the St. Silas has been very tight-lipped about information about Lord Avon. She knows what he looks like, and she knows that he died without heirs, that his wife had died a few years prior, that as far as St. Silas is aware, he has no relatives, no personal objects that he'd be looming with. He's likely at Weavingshaw is where she has kind of conjectured, because everywhere else that has been related to him so far, they've been to schools. They're about to go to one of his old houses that's not Weavingshaw. She hasn't seen anything. And St. Silas has not given her any hints about why he is searching for this ghost as well. And now she knows that he was the leader of this wake, this group of people who are selling prisoners from this big prison out for profit. She kind of on the travel to this new home, or this old home, she is asking, well, why did he lead the wake? And St. Silas reveals to her that he was up to his eyeballs in debt. The home itself is on land that's not very hospitable. It's next to the ocean, but it's part of the ocean where there is not good fishing. And so he's been, yes, keeping upkeep for this house, but he was hemorrhaging money before he died. And so he was selling prisoners in this kind of leading the wake in order to take the money to feed it back into his home. But even still, upon his death, he was up to his eyeballs in debt. The home, shortly after Lord Avon died, was purchased by a Mr. Martin, who is a very, very successful factory worker, who also is his factories manufactured both the medicine that successfully saved her and her brother, and all of the medicines that were kind of snake oil that did not save her brother. There is kind of a conspiracy there. Where we left off is they are exiting, or they're about to exit the carriage to this kind of old house that Lord Avon used to live at. St. Silas says that he has secured an invitation for her and himself to visit Weavingshaw in the future, and he begrudgingly says that the lavender in her hair is a distraction, that the ghosts may not be able to smell the lavender, and it may not be a physical outburst, but he is distracted, and that is crime enough. And that's where we left off. So at the 25% mark, we are planting the seeds of what I'm sure is, or what I know, because I know this is a romantasy, of the romance that will be happening between Silas and Lena. That's where we're at. So far, I really, really like a lot of the kind of stylistic choices that the author is making here. It's very poetic, but without leaning into purple prose. I'm really liking the descriptions of things. I mentioned like the skull splitting off of, or like kind of, it feels like the skull is going to split through the skin of the housekeeper. There are some really, really interesting descriptions of kind of the prison. There was one of the prisoners that she said it looked like he was a sack of rags because his clothes it seems so much larger just due to the sheer amount of weight that the prisoner had lost. A lot of the descriptions are really, really good, really, really compelling. I'm liking it a lot. I don't know yet how necessarily gothic it is. I mean, yeah, there's creepy houses and there's supernatural, so we're getting some of that, but time will only tell. We're just laying the scene here, but I'm liking it so far. So I like Lena. I feel like she's a very compelling character. It seems like it's very clear kind of her as a person. She has kind of a wide array of both strengths and weaknesses. We as the reader can kind of see some of those strengths and weaknesses. I like how she has these kind of descriptions of fleshing out her home country. I really like kind of all of those. It feels like we're seeing a lot of the important pieces being laid. So it's very, very fun. I do not like our St. Silas character so far. I know that that's probably intentional at this point, but right now, interested to see how she's going to try to redeem him, if she's going to try to redeem him, because right now he seems pretty awful. I can have some kind of conjecture. So what I'm guessing is he's probably not burning her book. He's just holding it captive, so she thought he burned it. It was unflappable when violence was presented at him, but as soon as violence was presented at her, he murdered the guy immediately. He's distracted by the lavender, so it's very clear that they're planting the seeds. He's definitely interested in her. Because I know how these romantic books go, but you need more for me to like a character than just being the male lead, so we will see. But that's where I'm at so far, so I will continue reading and I will check in with you at the halfway point. So I am at the approximately 50% mark. Where we left off, Lena and St. Silas were headed to one of the old estates that Lord Avon used to live in, but not Weavingshaw. Immediately afterwards, we cut to a group of people who are these aristocrats who are all meeting at Weavingshaw. And I'm going to speed run a couple of people because there's some information that I think I did not mention in the first part that comes into play in this scene. They're all here. It's a group of aristocrats, and it's very clear that these are members of the Wake. So we have Mr. Martin, who's the guy who currently owns Weavingshaw, and a bunch of other like aristocrats who are all kind of like power hungry, you know, like the grubby mwahaha people rubbing their hands. But one of the primary people is Lord Hargreaves. Apologies if I accidentally say Hargrave, by the way. Someone I used to know had the last name Hargrave, so I keep reading Hargrave. So Lord Hargreaves is someone who used to be friends with Percy Avon, so Lord Avon before he died. He seems to be kind of the de facto leader of the Wake right now. His mother was Algarin, so the country that Lena's from, and his dad was Moorish. And so because of that, he kind of feels like he needs to do what he can to lean into his Morin side. So he is part of the group here, and he's kind of the leader, but he's the other. While everyone else is out for power, he's more just out for stability. He's more for trying to protect himself and make himself seem more in grouping with the Moorland side and less with his Algarin side, even though he has dark skin. He is not kind of the white, blonde, blue-eyed of Moorland. So he kind of does what he can to cement himself more as one of the aristocrats on the Moorland side. And his whole thing is, while everyone else around him kind of wants power, he wants stability. And so he is really, really worried about the kind of overthrow of the Algarin king, the Malik, because he sees that and he says, well, it's going to come here. The peasants are already seeing kind of a successful revolution, so we need to do what we can to maintain our own power. In this meeting where they're kind of planning what they're going to do to kind of keep the proletariat at bay, keep them down, there is kind of a hush falls in, and somebody walks in. And he's the son of the Duke of Frey, and he is very clearly a demon. And it said that he, just like I said, how the housekeeper, Miss Van, has kind of the skin that's super tight over her head, that it looks like her skull's about to pop out. He's the same way. So we're getting hints that if he's a demon, likely so is Mrs. Vaughn.
His son Bingo.
Nemo.
And another thing with the name Frey, this is not the first time that we've heard that surname, and I don't think I mentioned it, but the Lena's neighbor, the only one who is kind of the white Moorish person, she gifted Lena a clock, a pocket watch, when Lena let her know that she was going to be working for St. Silas. This pocket watch is made of gold, so it's like very clearly valuable, and it has its faces do not go up to 12. I think it went to 18. The numbers are wrong, and so that's kind of why Lena was like, well, Margaret
Fabio
has a addiction to kind of this drug called tar, and so she's like, well, I don't know why she wouldn't sell this for money, but it must be because the numbers don't fit. But on the pocket watch says the word Frey. So again, just kind of picking the pieces together that this watch likely has to do with either the son of Duke
Frey, who is here in this meeting, or maybe just the Duke, the Aristos want to team up with the demon to keep people at bay. The demons need to feed on people, and so they're like, hey, you can solve our problems. We just need kind of a demon army, and we can suppress the uprising of the peasants before it even gets too far. And the demon says, hey, that's going to be a bit of a problem, because the only ways for demons to leave the underworld and come back onto the realm of the living is they have these vessels. And so if there is a vessel, one demon at a time can go, but the vessel can run out of power, and so that he can come into the realm to be here at this meeting, but his power is limited. He needs to through this vessel, and we can't just send people one by one through it. In order to do that, we would need to get what's called the limitless vessel, which is essentially this kind of mythical item that nobody really knows if it exists, but it's kind of a legend. And supposedly Lord Avon knew where the limitless vessel was. Hargreaves thinks that if he can get to St. Silas, then maybe St. Silas knows a little bit about where that could be, because St. Silas knows all of the secrets. Another really important thing to note before I kind of close this one out is Hargreaves has a connection to Lena. When Lena was working as kind of a companion, she was working as a companion for his mother. So the mother who was Algarin, and the reason that she was hired was because he wanted his mom to be able to speak with someone in her native language, especially as her mind started going. And the very first ghost that Lena ever saw was a woman who had been drowned. She had put rocks in her pockets and killed herself. And this was Hargreaves' wife. So Hargreaves is still in a lot of his kind of inner thoughts. He's thinking about his wife. He feels bad about it. And he feels that Weavingshaw is cursed, that Weavingshaw is the reason that his wife has died. And he kind of both loves and hates Percy Avon. Obviously, Lord Avon's dead, but they had kind of a frenemy relationship where when he was growing up, he was seen as other. Again, he is kind of mixed race. Everybody kind of ostracized him except for Percy, and Percy kind of was someone who he just oozes charm. And so the fact that Percy started taking him under his wing gave Lord Hargreaves a lot of sway, a lot of social clout as a child and onward, but Percy kind of never let Hargreaves forget that he was in his debt. And so everything he did was cruel. He would give out favors, expecting things in return. It was a very transactional relationship wherein Hargreaves was under kind of Percy's superiority. Percy definitely had the upper hand in their relationship. And so now, even after his death, he still kind of loves and hates Percy. And so that is where we kind of close that meeting. And then we kind of, meanwhile, back at the ranch with Lena and St. Silas, they are kind of getting into a flow of things, and Lena goes to visit her brother because it was the day now that she was going to see him, and he never shows up at the meeting. She knocks on Margaret's door.
His son Bingo!
Nemo!
She also has not seen him, and Lena remembers that he had a fight the day before, and so she's like, well, it's really weird that he went to the fight and he wasn't there. So she goes to St. Silas for help, and she basically says, hey, I need information. I'll trade you a secret. Where is my brother? And so he kind of points her to the leader of the Black Coats, and he warns her, and he says, hey, this leader is kind of the worst creature you can imagine. So I would not recommend you go there. Lena says, well, I'm going to go. I need to go for my brother. And so he eventually says that he's going to come. But the reason he says he's going to come with is because he wants to protect his investment. He says the only thing that Lena has to barter is her secret that she sees ghosts, and it's the only thing that keeps her valuable to him. So he is going to go with her to protect his financial investment in her. And don't worry, it's not for protection. It's because he needs to be the only one to know her secret. Methinks he doth protest too much. Anyway, they go to this man who leads the Blackcoats, and again, he has that same telltale stretched skin across his skull, so it's pretty clear that he is also a demon, just the reader knows, Lena does not. While they're there, things that I think will be of note is there is a framed piece of paper that says, we only bury lambs, or something along those lines. And that's notable because later on she comments on it, and St. Silas says there's nothing on that piece of paper, but she can read it.
That
That sign can't stop me because I can't read.
So that's why that's important. Also in the room is a ghost of a young boy who has died, obviously. The demon kind of wants to get information from Lena. If she gives him something, he will tell her where her brother is. St. Silas steps up and says, no, I will trade you information. That makes the demon black coat guy even more intrigued, and he says, well, absolutely, I would so love to have one of your secrets. You need to tell me something that hurt you. And so Silas goes and he points to a scar on his neck, and he says that this was done to me by a mother who was very, very upset about her son coming to confess to me. And so she put a knife to my throat. And I was just a kid. I was 17. I had just started doing this trade, doing my confessionals. He eventually reveals that, hey, the son who caused the mother to kind of attack him, was a full adult. He would never take information from children. When the demon asks what he did after the woman kind of held the knife to his throat, he says that he disarmed her, but he didn't cause her any further harm. He doesn't really say what happens after that, but seems like he spared her life. Again, it's not really explicitly said on page, so I'm putting a vague on that in case I need to rescind my words a little bit in the next section. She learns after this kind of from the secret for a secret that the demon has her brother, and he's in this house. He gives her the coordinates, but he doesn't really know the brother's fate. He says that I made my underlings take care of it. The reason that he's there is he's being punished because we told him to throw a fight the other night. There was someone who paid a lot of money for him to throw the fight, and he refused to throw the fight. He has been undefeated in his fights before, and he decided that his honor was more important than the money, and so he won the fight even though he wasn't supposed to, and so now he's being punished. Lena goes to the house with the coordinates, and it's very odd. It seems empty. St. Silas draws a weapon, makes sure that the building is clear. Her brother is kind of tied up, and he has kind of let her know that, hey, there were two men, they'll be back any second, you gotta go. And she says, no, we're getting out of here. She cuts the ropes. She has a dagger that Silas gave her, and then she also learns from Rami. She learns from the brother Rami. They took his sword as well, and his sword was something that his father had traded his wedding ring for in order to get him. So that sword is kind of like one of the last pieces that Rami has of his father. So she's really, really pissed off that the sword is taken. While they're trying to leave, and Rami is very, very beaten up. He can hardly stand. She's buckling under his weight too, so St. Silas has to help her carry him out. And as they're trying to leave, people come back. It's the two of them. And oh, by the way, there's actually three. One of the third one had snuck up behind Lena and started suffocating her. And she's kind of panicking. She's losing vision. She can no longer see anymore because her oxygen's been cut off. She can hear the struggle, and the only thing that kind of cuts through is a voice that's way too calm for St. Silas, and he says, oh, just tilt your head a little bit to the left, darling. Then she does so, and he shoots the guy, and it obviously like kind of takes him out enough for her to stab him, and so she kind of the two of them have killed. They subdue the others, get the sword back, and then she is kind of freaking out at the death of this person, and she tells St. Silas that they have to go back this evening. They have to bury the one that she killed, that the two of them killed. She begs him. They drop Rami off with Miss Van, who is going to kind of help take care of him. The two of them kind of go back and bury the body, and while they're burying it, it's a child, and he is someone who is Algaran just like her, and so St. Silas is saying that he needs her to just say something. He's like, we can't be working in silence. You gotta just I don't care what you say something. And so she starts reciting flowers from her botany book, and he's kind of pissed off. He's like, will I ever hear the end of this goddamn book? But clearly it's having an effect on him a little bit to help with the concentration in order to kind of bury this boy. They get into a interesting discussion about how he is saying, well, you did what you needed to do. You didn't have a choice. And she's kind of saying, you
always have a choice. But me and this boy, this Algarin, we are always going to be judged for our race, for our skin, no matter what. Like, the amount of people who fall in with the black coats are mostly immigrants, and it's because there's no other choice. And so don't sit here and say that we didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice, this boy and I, because of just our immigrant status, because of our race. We are always going to be othered, and in this country, we do not belong, and you guys never let us forget that. You never treat us like we belong, and so there are not the options for us that you have. And he kind of turns it back on her and is saying, well, you're saying that you didn't have a choice, but I didn't have a choice the first time that I dug a grave. I was 14 and he was 12, and he's very, very clearly hurt by this action, and so she kind of like realizes that like maybe I should I might have wounded him too. She realizes that he told her something about himself that he probably shouldn't have wanted to part with. They bury the body, and she talks about how there is a tradition in her culture to put a certain kind of rose on a grave, and she feels bad that she's not going to be able to put that rose down. She prays over him, says some final words in her language. St. Silas says that it sounds a lot like when she was saying something to the rebel who was in the prison, and she's like, well, it's not the same thing, but they're both goodbyes. And she notes that it's interesting that he remembered this. They go home, and Miss Van is helping take care of Rami, and she says, hey, like, we have a tentative truce. I don't like Miss Van, but she is tending to my brother. At night, she starts seeing the boy that was over the demon's shoulder. And so he starts becoming friendlier and friendly with her. He starts chasing the other ghosts away at night as well. So he's keeping vigil over her at night. And so she eventually puts out a bunch of pieces of paper to kind of make essentially like a makeshift Ouija board to communicate with this ghost. His name is Theodore. He apparently has the power to banish ghosts, or he, being a ghost, has more sway with the ghost than she does. Theodore has kind of become an ally. He's not there every night, but he's there most nights to kind of protect her. Eventually, she kind of goes down and talks to St. Silas, and he very much is kind of shaken up by things. She kind of sees that he's got some kind of emotion going through him. So she asks him, maybe like, hey, while his guard's down, she asks him if she knows information about Lord Avon that he's not telling her. And while that's happening, Theodore comes. So she starts talking to Theodore in front of St. Silas, and she asks Theodore, hey, are you able to help with getting Lord Avon? And Theodore says yes, and he starts kind of communicating with her back and forth. And he points to this red book that is in this painting that they have of him, which is shown so that Lena would know what he looks like if they see the ghost. He points to the red book, and then he starts pointing at St. Silas. And she's asking him kind of like what's going on, how did this book, who has the book, who can help us get the book? And he spells out Bram, which is St. Silas's first name, and then he spells out Weavingshaw. And then he kind of disappears. And so it's pretty clear that St. Silas will be able to help if they can get this red book. Between St. Silas and Theodore, that the two, they will be able to help summon Lord Avon. And then afterwards, he seems very, very shooken up at this, 12-year-old boy who is now a ghost, and said Bram. And so he asks Lena if Lena can start calling him by his first name. And she says, no, it's actually much safer for me on the other side. You are not Bram, you are St. Silas. And so she is trying to kind of keep a distance from him. As they are tending to her brother slowly gets better. One of the days she is asleep and she dreams not of a ghost, but of Mrs. Van. And Mrs. Van is pissed off at her and is saying, how long does he have to endure this? In the dream, she feels like she has to touch her, and so she does touch her, and then the next day she wakes up, the door is ajar, and she hears yelling between St. Silas and Mrs. Van, and he's saying, how dare you touch her without my permission? And Miss Van is saying, well, she stole something from me. And Lena is very, very confused. She's eavesdropping, they catch her, and there is a exchange where she realizes she's in her nightgown, and it makes both her and St. Silas flush because it's a romance book. She asks if they can install a lock on her door because her door is open, and he says, yep, consider it done, it will be installed the next day. And so there is kind of that tentative truce between Mrs. Van and Lena, because Mrs. Van is helping to kind of
help her brother through his kind of beating. It's a very tepid truce. The word they used was tepid. Word choices amazing in this book. But while her brother is kind of getting better, Saint Silas has told her, take time off. You do not need to be working with me, and we do not need to keep looking for Lord Avon until your brother's better. Her brother starts getting pretty much healed, and she entreats him and says, hey, can my brother work for you? Because I need to, I can't imagine him if he is back on his own. The Blackcoats will take him. He says, sure, he can be brute force. So Rami is now in the fray here. There is more and more kind of getting into the kind of swing of things, and just the routine of working with her with the confessions. And one day there is a man who seems to be putting Saint Silas on edge. She says that his face is pretty much impassive, but his eyes are pissed off. She knows that after this that Saint Silas is going to go after the man who was confessing. She did not hear the confession. He asks her if there are any ghosts around him. She says no, and then that day, or she watches after the guy goes, and St. Silas kind of slinks off, and it says that he's kind of like a hound who's scented blood. That evening, she wakes up to frantic knocking at about midnight, and it's Mrs. Van, and she says, get dressed, come down right now. St. Silas needs you. They go down, and St. Silas is carrying the broken, bloodied body of a young child, and there is a ghost that is hovering over the child. The ghost is pissed off, and the ghost is the man that Silas was following. And so she and Mrs. Van tend to this kid, and the whole time St. Silas is holding the boy and is talking to him and is telling him fairy tales all night as they're working on kind of helping him. And it says that he's talking so long that his voice gives out, but he keeps talking anyway. They end up healing the boy. The boy was a servant in the household of the angry ghost. And one thing to note is when Lena comes downstairs and sees the bloody boy, she sees the ghost looming over it. She says, you did this. And St. Silas is very hurt. And he says, I know that your instincts are usually right, but no, I didn't do this. And she realizes after kind of this spending all night trying to save his life that St. Silas thinks she was talking to him. So she's like, I will not be able to go to sleep without talking to him. So she goes, finds him on a courtyard. He's smoking a cigarette, which she thinks is very strange. She didn't think he would have any vices.
The guy is smoking. He's also smoking a cigarette.
And it makes him seem pretty human. His voice is still gone from talking to this young boy all night and kind of distracting him with these stories. And she kind of clears the air and is basically saying, I was talking to a ghost, I wasn't talking to you. And they have kind of a flirty moment where it's kind of one of those tension moments where it's well, why would you think that I care about your opinion? She's like, I know that you care about my opinion. I'm not going to get into it. It's just one of those scenes where it's kind of the tension between two of them. There's a comment that St. Silas says, you better be careful. There's a look in your eyes that says that you don't hate me anymore. We get to the next chapter, and it is St. Silas in the underworld, and he is visiting the Duke of Frey. We learn while he is there that he was, as a child, someone who was meant to be fed on by the demons. The demons will capture children, will capture any human, but this certain Duke of Frey has a preference for young children, and they are there for them to feed on, and that's what gives them kind of their agelessness, is feeding on the emotions and the secrets and the internal desires of humans is what keeps them alive, keeps them ageless. There was a pool of boys who were all kind of under contract with the Duke of Frey to give them their secrets. And we learned that Theodore died days before his contract was going to be over. That St. Silas feels really guilty about this, that Theodore would only have been with him, or had only died because he had been around and he knew St. Silas. St. Silas goes down, visits the Duke of Frey, and he pulls out his ledger and begins reading the secrets therein. As he's reading these secrets to the demon kind of is anti-aging in front of him, and St. Silas reads out one that is a lie. The demon is pissed off and says, well, you know the deal. And so St. Silas has to
tell the demon one of his secrets, and so he does so, and he as he does so, he kind of brushes over the idea of Lena, and the demon kind of gets really intrigued about this emotion from Saint Silas. When he's talking about Lena, he is able to kind of gloss over it. It's said that he over time has learned how to kind of protect himself from the demons, keep what he wants to keep hidden, for the most part hidden. He kind of learns how to kind of skirt by and not lie but give half-truths. And we learned that this kind of arrangement came about where the demon was going to kill Saint Silas, and Saint Silas says, well, how about I become useful to you, instead of killing me, contract me, give me endless gold, so that way I can pay people, and I will record their secrets, and I will come down and periodically read them to you, and kind of sustain you even more than it could be fed by just me. You're not just getting my emotions. Instead of getting my emotions, you are getting the emotions of the masses, and so long as you provide me enough money to kind of keep them coming back to me, I will be in your servitude, and I will give you the secrets that are written down in this ledger. One thing to note is that the demon calls Saint Silas Bram the whole time, and he is saying that that's kind of one of the reasons why he wanted to hear Lena call him Bram, is because he wants some form of comfort in his name, because the only people who call him his name is the demon. He sneaks out, he buys the special rose at the black market that Lena said was put on graves, and he goes, and in the underworld there are 2 graves that he kind of clears the weeds off of, and it's very clearly the 2 graves. It hasn't been explicitly said, but based on the implications, it's the 2 graves are, one is for Theodore, who died because he knew him, and then the other one is from an unknown person who he died. It was kind of his, or who he killed. It was Saint Silas's first kill, and it said that he had bludgeoned him with a rock, is something we'd learned in the story. And so he lays the flowers down, 1 each, and then he kind of comes back to the land of the living. In the land of the living, we are finally at the point where Lena and Saint Silas, as well as her brother, are going to go to Weavingshaw. And they, on the journey, they keep passing the kind of the masses who are rebelling more and more. There's comments as to where St. Silas is saying, well, these aristocrats are being dumb because all that they had to do is spend a little bit of money to better the working conditions of some of these people, and they would have not only loved them for it, but they would have made more money because their workers would be more productive if they're in better conditions. As they are going, they get to one of the inns, and Lena realizes that the salt that she has been very carefully collecting at each of these places, she left it behind. And so she has no way to build her salt circle. And so she is terrified, and immediately after this, she sees the ghost of Lord Hargrave's wife, that first ghost that she'd ever seen. She starts kind of following it out. She doesn't even have time to put on like an overcoat or to do her hair or anything. She's kind of all ready for bed. And she's sneaking out of the inn, and she runs into St. Silas, and she's very intrigued as to why he's out and about. She makes a joke that maybe he's burying bodies in the forest. And he kind of follows her from a distance. He's with her nearby. He's refusing to kind of have her go into the forest alone. And she says that she is kind of comforted by his presence as she follows the ghost. He doesn't obviously know who the ghost is, but as they get closer and closer onto the lands of Weavingshaw, and at the kind of this cliffside by the sea, he realizes that it must be Lady Hargrave, and he sees where Lena is looking because the ghost points at kind of a willow tree. He sees where she's looking. He kind of clicks to, and he makes a mad dash with Lena for this tree. He ends up kind of overtaking Lena, and he like grabs her, and they go down in the sand. She throws sand in his eyes to kind of keep going, and she finds a bottle with 2 papers in it. She smashes it and shoves the papers down her dress. He basically is saying that like, oh, you think that that's gonna stop me? And she's like, you wouldn't dare. And he's like, dare me. I will go and grab these no matter where you put it, and it might actually be kind of fun for me. They have a heated moment, and that gets interrupted because the
Lady Hargreaves is very much trying to get Lena's attention, so much so that she starts to almost kind of slap Lena. And again, when the ghosts touch her, they possess her, and she's terrified of being possessed, so she kind of lurches back, breaks the moment, and she watches as the ghost points frantically to St. Silas, touches her chest a couple times where Lena says it looks like she's making a gesture of apology, points to Weavingshaw, and then she dissipates. And so Lena kind of realizes that like this must have been the reason that she was here, still on this earth, and she wonders, it's kind of a bittersweet moment of, is the first ghost that I ever saw, will I see her again? St. Silas is asking, well, was it Lady Hargreaves? She basically says, well, trade me a secret for a secret. Will you tell me will you tell me more about the wake? He says no, and he says no because you're probably going to trade yourself for your father, and so I don't care enough to know about your secret about if that was Lady Hargreaves. I'm not going to tell you more. She reads the papers, and the first paper has been so worn down by the elements and the moisture of the sea that in pulling them apart, the first piece of paper, all of the words are lost. The second piece of paper, some of them are still intact, and it's musings about how Weavingshaw is the cause of all of these ghosts. Anyone who has set foot at Weavingshaw is cursed, and that she feels guilty about having cursed this poor boy. I'm saying she feels guilty. We're assuming that the letters were written by the Lady Hargreaves. We don't really know. So that's where Lena kind of lets St. Silas see them, and he seems pretty affected by this letter, and she asks, well, are you the boy who was cursed that gets talked about in this letter? And he is pretty impassive, and he's pretty stoic, but she realizes as she's kind of on the walk back home, reflecting on the days, on the walk back to the inn, reflecting on the day, that though he seemed very composed and he was walking at a brisk pace and he seemed pretty normal, his hand was shaking as he held the lantern. And so that is where we are at. Oh, tiny piece that I forgot is the wake took a bunch of victims. One of them is Lena's father, and we learned that the wake, which it was implied, but now we have proof positive in the text, that the wake is selling prisoners to the demons in the underworld to finish out their sentences. So however long their sentence was on the mortal world, they're going to be finishing their sentence in the demon world, so or until they die, to kind of sustain the demons and keep them going. So her father is one of the ones who has been traded, and her father had a discussion with Lord Hargreaves about how Lena was in his employ because he recognizes that, you know, he has the same skin as an Algaran. So they're talking in Algaran, and on his way down, he tells Lord Hargreaves that Lena used to work for him, and that Lord Hargreaves realizes that, oh yes, I do remember her vaguely, and she is the one who is working for St. Silas, and her dad seems really, really incensed that Lena is working for St. Silas. She's like, I warned both of my children to stay away from that con man. The main gist of it is that her father is now in the underworld. So that is where I'm at the 50% mark. If you cannot tell, I am loving this so far. The word choices are absolutely fantastic. There have been so many points where I'm just like sitting and staring at a sentence over and over again about how like just the immaculate wording. There was one where it's like she's watching St. Silas and it feels like emotion is just hemorrhaging, and she's seeing him actively like tying essentially a tourniquet on his wound to kind of try to stop the bleeding of emotions on his face. They're talking about like the descriptions of kind of Weavingshaw on the moors. I keep reading these sentences that just are the wording and the diction has been just fantastic. So I love that because I feel like, I don't know, it's hard to find modern day stories that like have that without feeling pretentious to me. And this one's striking that balance really, really well. And so I am very, very interested in that. I also have to admit that I'm coming around on St. Silas a little bit. I do not like our St. Silas character so far. I am but a simple woman, and so you give me a main male lead who spends all night talking himself hoarse, helping a small child through kind of a bout of pain to distract him, and I'm hooked. I'm a simple girl. That is where I'm at.
I will continue on reading, and then I will check in again at the 75% mark. Probably gonna run a couple errands first, and then I'll hop back in. I am here for my 75% of the way where we left off. We have Lena, Rami, and St. Silas are going to Weavingshaw. I think earlier I said that they were invited to some sort of party. Sort of, it's a hunting party. So they're going to be staying there for a week. St. Silas blackmailed Mr. Martin into inviting them while they invited all the other aristocrats. Immediately, there is just kind of like, it's basically the house is kind of like a maze, but St. Silas knows every kind of passageway in and out. He seems like he knows where he's going, and Lena keeps thinking that he might have been a servant here in the past simply because of how well he knows his way around. When they get there, they have a very cold greeting with Mr. Martin. There's kind of a little bit of a testosterone kind of back and forth between St. Silas and Mr. Martin, where it's clear that St. Silas has a bunch of dirt on Mr. Martin, and Mr. Martin's still pissed off at Rami as well for throwing the fight. And so there's just like thinly veiled animosity all around. Among the group is one of the men who was part of the Wake group. He's this lord, and he is absolutely creepy, leering at Lena. Throughout her stay, he tries to make excuses to touch her, get in her face, and she's not happy about it. Eventually, St. Silas gets the creepy lord guy, I can't remember his name, he's like the red-headed lord, but that doesn't help you, and Mr. Martin out. When they leave, there is a ghost of this woman named Moira who possesses Lena in front of Rami and St. Silas, and while she's being possessed, she sees Moira's memories, and Moira was the kind of child bride, the second wife, mistress, who eventually gets married to him, of Lord Avon. And Lord Avon, it's like this kind of strong, manly protector figure, but also has this kind of undercurrent of danger, and he's strong and protective to her, but also he uses some of that strength against her as well. And he eventually, we learn in the memories that he killed her. He had told Moira a secret and then ended up killing her, strangling her, so that way she could not tell the secret.
'Cause two can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
Well, her brother pulls her out of the possession by clinking coins together, and St. Silas asks her straight up if she has been possessed, if she can be possessed, and she refuses to tell him. She thinks that it's kind of her final secret, and so she's not ready to give him kind of that final piece. So even though he's seen it and he knows, she's kind of protecting herself by not giving him that secret freely. He comes to her and he says, hey, if you're ever encountering a ghost, I want you to come find me because I will pull you out of it. Now that I've seen how dangerous it can be, I don't want you alone with them. They are using the time at Weavingshaw to hunt for the red journal. Kind of the first day, it's raining, they're on the moors, it's very kind of like broody, stormy, and so they're trying to find things to do inside and also stay out of people's way, stay out of suspicion that they are kind of searching this house while they're there. One of the people makes mention to the crypts that are beneath Weavingshaw, and someone presents that maybe the whole party, the whole hunting party should go down. Mr. Martin says no, that the crypts are undergoing renovations and it's not stable, and St. Silas kind of scoffs at this. Later on, are still continuing to search for the journal. Amongst the rain is also just like these wolves that are out howling, and so sweeping landscapes, kind of force of nature. It's very, very aesthetic. It's giving. I know I joked about how like too many things are labeled as gothic. We've got enough, especially with kind of the descriptions of Weavingshaw, this like haunted house, personifying the house, the forces of nature. I'm gonna say that there's enough. I still stand by too many things are labeled as gothic simply because it's kind of like dark and broody, but this one has enough of the things that like check the boxes to where I'm like, okay, maybe this one can count. When they are searching, St. Silas keeps telling them about some kind of hidden places that they could go look for things. So he knows not only the entire landscape of the house, but he knows some of like the hidey holes, some of the caves that connect to the house. He knows about the attic. And so he knows too much. Eventually he says, well, it's time that we should check the crypt. They go down, and he was talking about how the crypt is built like a maze and how most people need a map even to know where they're going. But of course he leads them through without any issue. There are also kind of booby traps in this crypt that Remy ends up actually triggering. He lights one of the lamps that's kind of along the side, and it is supposed to be an explosive. It misfires, so it just smokes, but it was supposed to explode, and St. Silas kind of grabs Lena and protects her with his body. Eventually they go to where the coffins are, and Lena sees Moira again. She's playing a piano. It's just a bunch of graves and then the piano. They have heard voices in the background. Oh, also, while she was there for a part, she was possessed again. She didn't realize she was being possessed, but suddenly her nose was just bleeding, and they end up clicking the coins and it dissipates. But so she had recently been possessed. They hear voices and footsteps behind them, so she pleads with Moira to help hide them. Moira points them to a coffin that is empty, and so Remy ends up pushing the stone tablet off the top. Lena gets St. Silas to go in with her, and she's kind of convinced Remy too, but St. Silas is having an absolute panic attack. He does not want to go into this coffin that looks like it's meant for a boy, like a small child. Eventually she gets them both to squeeze in, and then Remy says, well, someone has to cover the coffin, so I will cover it. Don't worry, I'll find a place to hide. She protests, but he slams them in. While they're in there, they hear Mr. Martin and Lord Hargreaves talking in the crypt, and it seems like Mr. Martin has a lot of investments that have gone bad lately. He's hemorrhaging money, and his kind of last hope is this shipment of tar, which is the drug that I was telling you about earlier in the story, and he is hiding tons of bags of this drug in the crypt. Then he ends up leaving after they've kind of arranged for the shipment. Again, she notices that St. Silas is very clearly affected by being in this coffin. Heart racing, breathing really hard, eyes wild, the whole shebang. And she kind of tries to calm him down by grabbing his hand, and he's just gripping her really tight. And she asks if he is afraid of small spaces. And he says, no, I'm not scared of small spaces. Remy takes the lid off, helps them out, and she notices that on the coffin is this carving of this boy and this olive tree. So she's like, oh, interesting. And she notices again that it's an empty coffin, but it's a coffin for a child. Remy lets them know that he was hiding behind the open door. They never closed the door, so he heard the whole thing too. They go and they look at the tar that is there, that drug, and it's a huge amount. Remy says that this is enough to buy the entire country of Algara. Insane amount of this drug, and he gets into kind of a bit of a rage.
Do you think that smoking drugs is cool? Do you think that doing alcohol is cool?
And he starts slashing the kind of the bags, the containers that it's in, and so the powder gets everywhere, ruins the shipment. While he's kind of in this fit, both St. Silas and Lena are begging him to stop. He does not, and they're saying that, like, you've no idea what you've done. Like, Mr. Martin's going to kill you if he finds out. And he says, no, don't worry, he won't notice. By the time he'll see this, we're already gonna be gone. We're only here for a week anyway. The next day, the weather clears enough for the hunting party to go out, and so all of the men go out for this hunt. Lena decides that she is going to continue searching, and so she ends up getting Arthur, who is kind of the cab driver and kind of muscle hired help for St. Silas, and she gets Arthur to take her into town. Arthur is pretty reluctant to do this because of all the riots. He was saying how, hey, like, the entire country is basically just waiting for one spark to go off, so we should not be here very long. She ends up going to this home that is from the old housekeeper who used to work at Weavingshaw. She thinks that, hey, the servants know so much more than anyone gives them credit for. I'm going to talk to this old housekeeper to see if she knows either kind of anything else about Lord Avon or where this red book is. She goes there and she is talking with this housekeeper, and the housekeeper is being pretty cryptic, but then the housekeeper sees on a gold chain the pocket watch that she was given by Marjorie.
Mother of God, would you look at the time?
and the pocket watch that says Frey, and she notices it, and then she pulls out one that looks almost identical, except for instead of going up to 18, it goes up to I think 36, and there's an inscription on it that still says Frey, but then it says Avons can cross, and it's been kind of like etched. When Lena's looking at them, she kind of switches them. So she gives her back the one that she had that went up to 18, and she pockets the one that has Avons can cross. And when she leaves, the housekeeper says that the housekeeper has seen the Lord Avon. And Lena is saying, well, the ghost, like Percy's dead. The housekeeper says, no, the Lord Avon visited me the other day and he brought me firewood. It's the Lord Bramwell Avon. Lena comes to the realization that, oh, that's how he knows his way. Kel Surprise, the male love interest, is kind of the lord of the house. We all saw that coming. Lena has a little bit of a panic attack at this revelation. She goes to the ocean and she ends up taking off most of her outer clothes, so she's just in like her petticoats and her chemise, and she goes into the water and she keeps thinking about how there is a curse. She found out in the crypt that there is a curse on Weavingshaw, that all of the Avons are kind of get possessed by these demons. They end up giving more and more of themselves to these demons, and the reason that she was kind of bleeding when she was in the crypt was that the demon was trying to feed on her, and so it drives anyone who's not an Avon to death, but then it slowly feeds on the Avons. So she realizes that she's going to kind of mourn him when he does eventually die, because seems fixated on this quest for Weavingshaw. She is kind of going deeper and deeper in the ocean. Then St. Silas shows up. He kind of like jumps in after her fully clothed, brings her further into the shore to where they're kind of like standing waist deep, and he is like asking if she's possessed, if she's okay. It starts pouring, and also like she's soaking wet, so he picks her up and brings her into this cave, and she tells him that she knows who he is. There's kind of this heated moment where he is at first trying to distract her from thinking too hard about the fact that he is an Avon, but then eventually he realizes that like she's unshakable, she knows the truth. She promises him that she won't tell anyone about him. He goes, well, what about the wake? Will you tell the wake? And she says, no, I won't tell the wake about you, but he also wants her to promise that she won't tell the wake anything about her. And she does not do that. She's saying about how he is doing everything he can to protect his home, which is Weavingshaw, but her home is her father. And so she needs to do what she can to protect her dad. And so we go back to the home. When they were in the cave, St. Silas saw the Avons can cross etched on the pocket watch, and that kind of sparks a memory. And so on one of the final days, he goes back down to the crypt and goes to this lake where it was where Lena had been almost possessed by this demon. And he realizes that he, as an Avon, is going to be able to cross this lake, and likely that's where the red diary is. So he kind of gets in this boat, and as he goes across it, he starts having these demon-fueled hallucinations where he sees kind of the first boy that he killed. He sees memories of his time when he was first sent into the underworld and was being tortured by these demons. And then eventually, because he keeps rationalizing that all of these are hallucinations, he sees Lena in his boat, and he kisses her like he wanted to in the cave. And then he realizes that this is just a hallucination as well, so he throws her into the water and kind of drowns her and refuses to look back. Gets across, and there is a coffin. He pushes the stone tablet off of it, and his dad is still in there rotting and juicy and gross, and in his hands is the red journal. So he has it, he kind of goes back across, and then the next day everyone is prepping to leave. Rami is kind of outside, just kind of thinking about his time at Weavingshaw, and Mr. Martin comes up. Mr. Martin knows that he was the one who ruined his shipment of drugs, and so he says that he's going to throw Rami in prison, or he's going to execute him. They get really, really heated, and St. Silas shows up. St. Silas says, "What can I give you for him?" And Mr. Martin says, "Nothing, I want his death." And so Rami suggests a duel then, and Mr. Martin says, "There's no way that I would duel you. You're too good with a sword. And instead I'm just going to execute you and make your sister watch." And St. Silas is saying how, well, what if instead of dueling the brother, you duel me. I step in and I am the person that you fight, and we'll fight to the death. And if I win, then obviously he's dead. But then if I lose, I will make sure that your secrets about you do not make the front page. I have kind of a contingency plan in place should we not arrive back to our home safely. But so long as I win and you, or so long as if I lose, you let Lena and Remy go, we'll make sure that, you know, the word doesn't get out, and also the person who knows your secrets dies, so it's kind of a win-win. So they agree to this, and so they're going to duel the next day. That evening, St. Silas goes up to Lena's room, and he lets her know about the duel. He also lets her know that the journal has been found, so she and Theodore and him kind of summon the Lord Avon's ghost. So Lord Avon's ghost is going to come to her room at noon, because that was the next time. He came to her room at like 1 a.m. So it was kind of the next time between that, the 12 and 12 when the ghosts are strongest. And so he says, hey, with this whole duel thing, should I not make it, then you are going to leave with Mrs. Van. She's going to get you and Remy out, and there is going to be a letter for you in the bottom desk drawer in my office. He gives her a revolver and reminds her how to use it, again kind of reminiscing on that time when she had the gun pointed to his stomach and he was like, shoot for the heart. And then he also gives her the botany book. He has it. He did end up ripping 3 pages out like he threatened, but instead of burning them, he saved them and he ended up stitching them back together. When she remarks that the stitches are actually really well done, he says that she asks him where he learned to sew. He reveals that he has a gnarly looking gash on his abdomen and he had to sew it himself back when he first started working as kind of a confessor. They kind of have a farewell, and it's kind of one of those things where she's like, promise me you'll come back and all that, but it's kind of their goodbye. And then that evening, every night she has been with the Salt Circle, and there was one night where she saw Lady Hargreaves. She thought that Lady Hargreaves had kind of been at peace, but she saw Lady Hargreaves, and when she woke up, before she could even say anything, Theo scared her away because remember, Theodore is kind of protecting her at night from the ghosts. And so she last minute decides that that evening when she goes to bed, she's not going to do the Salt Circle because she wants to call Lady Hargreave. And so she goes to sleep without that Salt Circle. And then that evening she dreams of the Lady Hargreave, and we get kind of a bit of backstory about what went down at Weavingshaw so many years ago. So Lady Hargreave met Lord Hargreave at a ball of some sort, and even then the women were kind of chattering about how Percy Avon was someone who was kind of neglecting his wife, kept his wife locked away at Weavingshaw, and she would not be able to leave the premises until she provided him with an heir. And that's the evening that Lady Hargreave met Lord Hargreave. They fell in love really quickly. They get married. It's all sunshines and rainbows in the beginning, but she doesn't like how Lord Avon and Lord Hargreave kind of get on. She doesn't like the dynamic there, and there's more and more shady dealings going on, kind of whispers behind closed doors, but it's fine because every night her husband comes home into her room, and it's still just as loving as it was in the beginning. Eventually, Lord Avon has a son. The son's mother dies in childbirth, so Lady Hargreave is essentially like surrogate mother to this boy, and she loves Bram so much, and she sees how smart Bram is and how he keeps picking up on things and will notice small things that others don't, even as a child. And so he's picking up on some of the shady dealing, and occasionally once he gets older, they start bringing him into some of these meetings as well. And Lady Hargreave hates this. So in order to kind of preserve childhood, she has kind of a game system where they like leave notes for each other in this bottle on the sea, back and forth. And so she just dotes on him. And there are whispers where it's like the Lord Avon and Lord Hargreave are kind of talking about how they need to send more, that people want more kids, all that stuff, that the prisoners aren't enough anymore, and that they need to up the stakes. And she doesn't really know what's going on. One day, Bram is missing, and she is frantic. She is trying to get everyone to search for him, and none of the men will go looking. And so she is completely taken aback and heartbroken that this boy that she loves, she's basically like his mom, is missing and nobody's doing anything. Shortly after he goes missing, Moira comes to live in Weavingshaw. She very quickly thereafter is married to Lord Avon, even though she's much younger than him. And then about a week later, she's dead. And so again, it's something where Lady Hargreave is like, we could all see this coming. First his son, now his wife, or now his second wife, his child bride. Moira ends up dead. Lord Hargreaves is pissed off, and Lord Hargreaves is saying that we shared this, and so where have you hidden it? And she thinks that he's talking about Bram for a second, but in the back of her mind, she knows that no, he wouldn't be so incensed about Bram. And then one day, Lord Hargreaves challenges Lord Avon to a duel, and he kind of stumbles back covered in blood, tells Lady Hargreave that he killed him. And she says, well, what about Bram? He's like, no, well, because I killed him, Bram's never coming back. And so that's kind of the moment where Lady Hargreave kind of loses it. She writes 2 letters, one to her husband and one to Bram, and then she fills her pockets with stones and walks to her death. And so that is where we are at. I am really, really liking this. I don't know if you can tell. It is really, really good. So I know I kind of picked this up not knowing anything about it or knowing where it's gonna go. And I think at the beginning I was a little skeptical, but I am having a blast with this. I am really liking both the overlying storyline about kind of the secrets in this haunted home. I'm also really, really liking all of the kind of social commentary as well. So I think it's a really good balance of both, and I am having a ton of fun. So I am going to probably finish this. I don't know if I'll finish it tonight, but when I do, I will go ahead and check in with you. And honestly, I don't even think I'm going to do too many predictions, because all of the predictions that I thought were going to be kind of the heavy hitting ones at the very end have already been revealed. So I really don't know where it's gonna go from here. So we will go ahead and see. So I'm just gonna hop on into it, but I'm having a really, really good time. I'm liking the atmosphere, I'm liking the word choices. So I'm having fun. So I will go ahead and have some more fun, and I'll check back in with you when I'm done. Okay, so I am back here now that I have finished Weavingshaw. I finished this a couple days ago. I think it was like 2 days ago now. So as a recap for what happened in the plot, where I left off, Lena had just had the dream where she let Lady Hargreave in. Now it is the morning of the duel. So the brother is kind of chained up, and then we have Mr. Martin, and then Lord Hargreaves is his second. Hargreave makes St. Silas relinquish the gun that he always has on him, and then Mr. Martin and St. Silas kind of get into their sword duel, and everyone kind of thought that Mr. Martin would win pretty easily because he, used to be an ex-fighter. He's kept up with his swordplay, and everyone knows that St. Silas is really good with guns, but that kind of swordsmanship is kind of not his strongest suit. Turns out that those rumors are grossly exaggerated, and he is essentially about to win the duel when Hargreaves comes up and stabs St. Silas from behind. And it is in the same clearing where Hargreaves had a duel with St. Silas's father. Throughout this, Hargreaves is having kind of remembrances back to when he had fought Percy and when he killed Percy. So St. Silas ends up having a gun in his boot, and he shoots Mr. Martin, and he turns his gun on Hargreave, and Hargreaves lets him know that he stabbed him not with a normal blade, but with a blade that has been dipped in demon poison, and that the only way that Hargreave will give St. Silas the antidote is if he gives him the red journal. St. Silas refuses as a bit of collateral. Hargreave has made sure that the kind of creepy, leery redhead that I mentioned earlier is alone in Weavingshaw with Lena, and then that is what makes St. Silas that's the only thing that kind of shakes him, is knowing that the creepy guy is alone with Lena. He eventually subdues Hargreave. We learn that Hargreave has the black coats coming. We also learn that Theodore is working with the demon that runs the black coats, and that Hargreave hatched a plan
for Theodore to get close to Lena, and that Theo did not summon Lord Percy. So Lord Avon is not coming. His ghost is not going to visit her, and Theodore has kind of been working for the demons and also for Hargreave all along, just as kind of a way to ensure that the red journal is in either Lena or St. Silas's possession, so that way he can go ahead and take it. He has made it pretty clear that the journal has the location of the limitless vessel inside of it, but when St. Silas has looked through it, the only pages that have information on them is the first few, and it's pretty useless, and then the rest of the journal is blank.
I can't read!
He, after subduing Hargreaves, he does not kill him. He and Lena's brother end up in the carriage, and they are rushing off to Weavingshaw. And the next chapter, we are following Lena and Mrs. Van when Lord Creepy makes some very, very sinister advances towards her. Mrs. Van protects Lena, and then that makes the creepy guy, I can never remember his name, he's not very important, so sorry about that, but that makes her it makes him very angry. He knows that she's a demon, and so he is going to kill Mrs. Van, and then Lena says, well, how about we turn this into a bit of a hunt? And she does this in order to get some distance between her and him, where she can go ahead and try to shoot him. She misses. He gets really, really angry. He basically has his own gun and he's going to hunt her down. She and Mrs. Van end up in the crypts, kind of running away from him, and they set a bit of a trap where Mrs. Van will kind of stand out in the open for Mr. Creepy Leery guy to come up, and right when he is about to kill Miss Van, Lena goes ahead and shoots him from behind. Before he dies, though, he starts talking to Mrs. Van about the limitless vessel. This is the first that Lena has heard about this, and so she's just kind of curious as to what it could mean, and Miss Van also doesn't know what this limitless vessel is, but that she tells her that she should probably go ahead and tell St. Silas about it. The carriage arrives with Lena's brother, and then St. Silas is in the carriage and he is absolutely bleeding out. They are attempting to flee back to their kind of the main town where they live. Both the Blackcoats are after them, and also with this poison. This certain type of poison has a very, very rare antidote that's very difficult to make. Miss Van can make it, but she has to get back to her ingredients, which are in her office at the home. Effects of the poison is the person they have approximately 5 days to a week to survive, wherein they're going to be in and out of consciousness.
Now it's time for you to go to sleep.
In and out of lucidity, and then eventually they will fall into a coma that they just will not wake up from.
Good night, little peas.
And then it is implied that there are worse things that happen to them after they fall into that final coma, but Miss Van does not get into the gory specifics. So they are fleeing, and it is snowing out. The weather is terrible. The carriage keeps getting stuck, and then eventually it overturns. So they have a plan to separate, where Lena's brother and Mrs. Van are going to ride on horseback overnight to try to get to the home to make the antidote. It is pretty clear that it's going to take a couple days to ride, and then they're going to have to take some time to make it. After it's made, then Lena's brother is going to ride back to administer the antidote. Lena and St. Silas are going to be hidden. There's no way that in St. Silas's condition that he can ride. He's already kind of in and out of lucidity. He is having a hard time staying awake, and it's theorized it's going to take, if all goes according to plan, then the brother will be able to be here back in about 5 days. Mrs. Van and Lena's brother ride off, and Lena has to take St. Silas and kind of go through the woods. They're about 4 miles away from the town, and during it they are being pursued by the Blackcoats, so she has to kind of keep them hidden. He's having a harder and harder time staying awake. He has lost consciousness a couple times on this trip.
Christy, wake up! I don't like this! Christy, wake up!
In order to kind of keep him awake, she starts telling him essentially all of her secrets. And so she starts with kind of the most benign and then works her way up to kind of the biggest ones, including both that she loves her dad, but she kind of secretly hates her dad as well because of her dad picked an ideal over keeping the family safe, and he was kind of getting so entrenched in his unionizing that he was ignoring all of the dangers and ultimately got himself arrested and broke up their already kind of broken small family. So she loves her dad, and her dad is like the most important thing in her life, but she also hates her dad for picking his ideas over her. And then she also tells St. Silas what he already knows, that she has the ability to be possessed and that Moira has possessed her on occasion. They get to the town, and the town, parts of it are going up in smoke. The rioting has begun, and she mentions how the rioting, it wouldn't be something super new to her, but when they're in the big city, but in such a small town like this, there isn't a lot of places to hide. She originally was going to go to the housekeeper's house, but with the smoke all around there, she thinks that it's not the best idea, so she goes further to the inn that they stayed in that first night when kind of Lady Hargreaves took her into the woods. The innkeeper does not want to let them in because of all the rioting, and she eventually says, which stupid, but she gives him a bunch of money and says that she is going to be a guest of Mr. Martin in Weavingshaw, and so please let her have the room that she and her husband, that St. Silas is her husband, so that way they don't have to worry about 2 rooms, and also because the innkeeper seemed very put off that they would be an unmarried couple. So she says that St. Silas is her husband, that they were set upon by rioters, and that they took pretty much everything from her except for this small bag of gold, and if they would just let her spend the night, then she'll be out of their hair the next day. Eventually, after looking at the gold and hearing that she is a friend of Mr. Martin, he lets her have a room. St. Silas is in and out of delirium. She takes the red journal from out of his coat while she's kind of tending to his wounds, and she takes the journal out of his pocket to keep it safe, and she flips through it and notices that all of the pages are completely filled. She does not have time to kind of read it though, because he is kind of going in and out of delirium, in all but words confessing that he is into her. He finally kisses her, and then she ends up stopping it because she feels like she's taking advantage of him because he is not in his right mind. Eventually, they drift off to sleep, and then in the middle of the night, they are woken up by the innkeeper, and he says that soldiers are coming to subdue the riots, and that the rioters have built a blockade, very a la the French Revolution. Because she has indicated that the 2 of them are friends with the rich bourgeoisie, that he needs to have them leave because he's not going to have anyone like that in his inn right now in such a time of instability. So even though St. Silas is kind of drifting in and out of consciousness, she helps him eventually out of the inn, and they are hiding from Blackcoat. She is kind of going down an alleyway, and at the end of the alley, she sees Theo. She calls out to Theodore because she doesn't know that he's a traitor. He kind of indicates that she should enter this home, and inside the home is Orly, the demon who is the leader of the Blackcoats. They have her surrounded, and then they punch St. Silas in the wound already, so that way he kind of is passed out for a little bit.
Now it's time for you to go to sleep.
She decides that it is her time to try to make a deal with this demon. He indicates that all that he wants is the limitless vessel because he wants to go home. He has been trapped in the earthly realm and he just wants to get back to the demon world. And he doesn't have a vessel, but that she is a vessel, and that's why she can see the dead. He can speak to the dead because he has rings, which is where he lets her know that Theodore is working with him. The reason that she can see the dead is because she is a vessel, or she has been possessed by a vessel. He orchestrated essentially the whole thing. He made it to where she was opposed on all sides. With kind of the rioters. He stirred up the riots. He also was playing Hargreaves to kind of work against her, as well as have the Blackcoats. So he was kind of orchestrating the whole thing so that way she would eventually turn to him, and that he would make a deal. She would make a deal with him to get him to return home, which is all that he wants. So she eventually comes to a deal wherein she will kind of act as a vessel for him to return home. In exchange, though, he needs to take her someplace safe, and he needs to hand her the antidote for St. Silas. And so they shake on it, and immediately he takes her into this room that has this mirror that when she gets closer to it, her reflection kind of gets distorted further and further. She ends up walking through this mirror, and she is in this home in the demon world, both her and St. Silas. And then he hands her the antidote, and then after he has handed it to her, he punches her, takes it, throws it out a window, and it shatters. And he essentially tells her that she is bad at contracts. He took her someplace safe, but she didn't specify that it needed to be in the human world, and that he handed her the antidote, but he never said that he was going to administer it. And the reason that he did that was because he wants St. Silas to die, because he is never going to let her go. So he essentially leaves knowing that St. Silas is going to die any moment. And then while he is away, St. Silas wakes up. She kind of lets him know about the whole pickle. She gives him the red journal, and he lets her know that he has a watch as well, that the watches do not count down time, like how there was one that had 18, one that had 36, but that the watches are the years of indentured servitude that people have still on their contracts to the demons. And his watch has 108 years, which is why he was so focused on using the red journal to summon his dad for the curse, because the only way that he could break kind of his contract is to know what he was traded for. So he wanted to speak to his dad, and he can't break the contract without knowing the whole contract. He admits this to her. He essentially lets her know that he would, regardless, he is going to have 108 years still of servitude, and that now that they have the red journal, people will not stop looking for him and eventually for her. So he goes ahead and releases her from his contract. So she no longer is working for him and no longer is required to find the ghost of his dad. And that is where it ends, is kind of right there. I really, really liked it. I thought it was super fun. Like I've mentioned, I was really into the descriptions. I thought that the storyline was really fun. The romance was really believable, and I liked kind of the characters. Parts that I didn't enjoy, or not that I didn't enjoy, but there were a couple things that like stick out to me as like things that could have been done a little differently or like polished a little better. One of them is there is a lot of social commentary on immigration, on what it means to be an immigrant, kind of how you are othered, and kind of the racism and the never belonging to either side. And I thought that was great, and I like when stories kind of have substance. But one thing that I wish is that there were more characters who would show the opposing side. Everyone who Lena met, who was kind of the good guys, were all just 100% on board with everything that she said and were very much in for like social reform. And I just don't think that that would be super accurate. Like, I know that we don't want to paint kind of our male lead as someone who sees her as less than because of her skin tone, because of her immigration status, but he just very much takes everything in stride with everything that she said. And he never has to kind of like think about or grapple with or have his eyes opened to her reality. He just like accepts it immediately. And I feel like that, I don't know, so many characters kind of had that moment. And I feel like the story could have benefited from people. Yes, they can kind of accept that as her reality, but I feel like there would be more moments of reflection where he's like, oh, maybe these things are a problem. Maybe I have kind of been blind to how everyone who is Algarin has been treated. And there just isn't any of that. He's just kind of like rah, 100% for the cause. And I feel like that's pretty inaccurate as someone who would never have been faced with something like that. There would be some unlearning that he would have to do. Maybe we'll get some of that in other books as well, but that was one thing. And another thing that kind of bothered me was we have so many discussions around everyone not believing in demons, that demons are kind of a piece of the past, but it feels like everyone has either been indentured to a demon because everyone just happens to have these watches. So those people would believe in demons. We have every single member of the Aristos who is kind of in league with the demons and are kind of trading them as members of the Wake. So we haven't met a single character in the whole story who doesn't believe in demons or hasn't had firsthand involvement with demons. And if that's the case, then why is it that the rest of the country seemingly
believes that demons don't exist and that they've been banished and that they were all part of folklore when it feels like everyone's encountered a demon. I feel like if you saw demons personally or everyone you knew had encountered demons, that would be more of a accepted part of the world, is that demons do exist and that people wouldn't have forgotten about them or relegated them as kind of like this myth. So that just didn't, I thought that was weird. And then they also talked all the time about how Lena is so clever. And there was not enough evidence for it, because every single time she blunders every contract she's ever been in, she has just failed it epically. And then every time there was a hint, it took her way too long to kind of uncover the truth, and someone would have to reveal the truth to her. So she bungled her first contract because there were tons of loopholes that St. Silas would exploit. And then continually she would be watching contracts daily when he would be extracting confessions from kind of everyone that he would. And even then, she's still in kind of the very end of the story. She messed up the contract with the demon after already having messed up her own contracts, admitting to herself that she messed up her own contracts, and then watches contracts multiple a day for her job. It's not really believable that she would mess up that final contract so royally and also still be touted as someone who is so clever. That's one of the things that St. Silas kind of mentions that he likes about her, is her cleverness. And it's like, hey, you do not understand the basics of contract law, even though you are exposed to it all the time. You also need to have everyone reveal everything to you, like kind of the housekeeper revealing that he is Lord Avon, even though you like in your mind you've been having kind of like, oh, is he a servant in this house? And it's like, no, he's not a servant in the house. Listen to how he talks. Listen to everything about him. Of course, he was the long lost unknown son. And so it's not believable that characters think that she's so clever when she's just decidedly not clever. And it's okay to have kind of a not clever female main character. I think that in so many of these books, like, we have to make our leads so smart. And it's okay to have someone who's like maybe not the sharpest tool in the shed, but has a lot of other really good redeeming qualities. And I know that they point to another piece of her being so intelligent is her speaking multiple languages, because she knows Algarin and she had to learn Moorish through kind of growing up in Moorland. You can still know a lot of languages and be not the smartest, and that's okay, and you can still have a goal of working as a translator, and maybe you're just not the best at putting pieces together or putting puzzles together and like kind of the general like if X then Y. And I don't know, I think that there was too much of people telling us that she was smart, but everything that we were shown, she just wasn't. So yeah, those are kind of my qualms with the book, but overall, I hope that it's coming across how I really, really liked this book a lot. When I finished it, I was actually kind of pissed off. I was talking to my husband and I was like, God damn it, like, this is it ended on a cliffhanger. The second book is not out yet, and I absolutely want it really badly. If the second book had been released, then I would have started it kind of that same night. So I will absolutely be continuing this when the sequel is published. There isn't even an announcement date as to when that's coming out, and I swear if that does not get picked up, I'm going to be mad, because I genuinely really, really liked this. I really want to see where it goes. So I would definitely recommend this one if you want a really, really good story, clean romance. They essentially only kiss. So if you're somebody who isn't really into spice in your books, this is definitely the kind of romance that I would recommend to you. The writing was fantastic. And there was enough going on as well. I felt like the world was pretty flushed out. I have my qualms with how demons are kind of considered extinct or myths. But overall, I thought that the world was really, really good. I was bought in. things were kind of thought out, and there were some really, really interesting kind of parallels to real life as well in this, which is something that I always really appreciate. So I definitely would recommend this one. Overall, I really, really, really liked this, so would definitely recommend Weavingshaw. And I am pleasantly surprised at how much I liked this. I went into this not knowing much about it at all, just kind of seeing the cover and people saying, it's a gothic romantasy, it's fun. But it is a really fun gothic romantasy, so very, very glad I picked this one up. Definitely would recommend Weavingshaw. It's one of kind of the top few books that I've read so far this year, so please do yourself a favor and go ahead and read it.